only now making their way back home, and who had taken a detour into the pancake house for a quick breakfast before crashing in bed the rest of the day. A man sitting alone at a table held up a copy of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. The front page headline read, FWPD nets the Tunabomber. An absurd name, one slapped on the bomber after the explosives he planted in a mall food court sent up a shower of pizza crusts, Chinese noodles, and tuna salad, some of which had ended up in my hair. Under the headline was a photo of the bomber apparently taken from a high school yearbook. Randy Dunham was definitely too crazy to be forgotten. It was all too soon to tell whether he'd have a great summer, but it was doubtful given that he'd be spending the season in the state penitentiary. My eyes found Seth sitting in a booth in the back corner. Like me, he dressed casually, but in fire department attire. A long-sleeved tee embossed with the department's logo, along with a pair of cargo pants and black ankle boots. His bomb-sniffing Labrador, Blast, sat on the seat beside him. With their square jaws and short blonde hair, the pair looked about as alike as two different species possibly could. As Seth's green eyes met mine, my heart squirmed in my chest like a feral kitten afraid of being held. Every synapse in my brain misfired. Damn, this guy makes me stupid. I didn't like feeling stupid. Forcing myself to appear nonchalant, I weaved my way through the tables, leading Brigit by her leash. Blast stood as we approached, his tail wagging vigorously, slapping the vinyl of the booth with a whap, whap, whap. Seth stood too, though his tail remained motionless. My gaze dropped from his eyes and ran down over his soft lips to the cleft in his chin. The odd urge to reach out and touch it struck me, just like it always did. "Thanks for coming," he said softly. His eyes played over my long, dark hair. Though I often wore it up in a twist or ponytail, I left it down this morning, not because I knew he liked it that way and wanted to torture him or anything like that. Okay, maybe that was why. "You saved my life last night," I reminded him. What kind of woman would refuse to meet with the man who'd rescued her, even if he'd once cruelly broken her heart? A dark shadow played across his face. "Is that the only reason you came?" No, I thought. I suppose I could lie to Seth, but I had never been much good at that. Still, if he thought I was going to welcome him back with open arms, he had another thing coming. Rather than answer, I gestured for Brigit to hop up onto the seat and slid in after her. The waitress appeared with menus. "Coffee?" "Please," I replied. Seth merely nodded. When the waitress left to retrieve mugs and a coffee pot, I opened my menu and pretended to peruse it, afraid to look directly at Seth lest my eyes betray me. I didn't want him to see how thrilled I was he'd asked to meet me, how bad I hoped he might want to resume our budding relationship and see where it might take us. With Seth, I'd felt a special spark I hadn't with the small handful of other guys I dated. Of course, I was smart enough to know that not all sparks led to fire. Some fizzle out quickly with little fanfare, like a cheap Chinese firework. But given the right conditions, I suspected the spark between me and Seth could develop into a blaze big enough to cause Smokey the Bear significant concern. "I got you something." Seth slid a small rectangle wrapped in poinsettia print paper across the table. "I wanted to give it to you for Christmas, but—" His voice trailed off and he turned to stare out the window. I watched him for a moment. He'd bought me a Christmas present? Even though he'd broken things off before Thanksgiving? Obviously that meant he'd been thinking of me, maybe planning on trying to work things out between us before the holiday. But he hadn't. I wondered what had stopped him. Given the sentence he'd left unfinished, Seth didn't seem inclined to provide an explanation. Maybe he couldn't. Men weren't exactly known for being in touch with their feelings. I'm not sure they knew why they did anything. I reached out and slid the wrapped package toward me. There was no bow on it, but men weren't exactly known for their gift-wrapping skills either. Besides, it was the thought that counts, right? Carefully sliding a finger under the tape at one end, I pulled the paper off. I'd expected something typical, like perfume or a nice pair of gloves or jewelry. But instead, there was a book inside, the latest offering from David Sedaris in hardback, an autographed copy no less. No one, not even my parents, had ever bought me a more perfect gift.